research suggests that if we are in a space of positivity and if we live in a positive like within a positive mindset, everything is completely different. Your immune system is boosted. You naturally feel better. And that's very much like the work that you do in the 12 steps of recovery is like based around rewiring your brain and the way you consider things and you think about things. And when you're able to change that and turn it into, turn problems or challenges into a learning opportunity, you will grow exponentially. You'll become a totally different person. And I honestly think that the fear that's behind like negativity, it limits our growth. And this is the thing, I think we disconnect ourselves so much from our physical being and our mental being that we don't actually look for the signs that are already there. When your body's saying or your mind's saying, hey, slow down, I need attention, like, hello, and then if you don't pay attention to those signs because the show must go on, which is like the rock and roll saying, right? Then, it could lead to cancer. It could lead to so many other things. That what's happening on stage isn't reflected backstage. You've got all these like beautiful, multi-ethnicity kind of performers or performances or audience members, and then it's not reflected backstage. And that's actually just not a healthy ecosystem, so that I can, exactly as you said, be of service to other people in a way that someone from outside of the industry wouldn't be able to understand. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, that extra layer of empathy of being like, oh shit, I've been on the back of a tour bus and felt like that. Or, oh shit, I've been, on the side stage, or I've been, working at a label, or I've been working in a management company and felt that. And it's having that extra ability to empathize is like, that is immeasurably important.
Yeah. Welcome to the Collaborative Resource Hub by Wellness Provisions. Our mission is to bridge the gap between mental health, wellness, and music, specifically rock and roll. I'm Amy McBride, owner of Wellness Provisions, the most badass wellness business. Wellness Provisions supplies rock and rollers with high-quality supplements. We give you a trustworthy place to go where you can essentially shop blindfolded. Our wellness kits were created out of a need to simplify your shopping experience and make it stress-free. You'll get the most effective nutrients in the least amount of bottles with the least trial and error. Immerse yourself in the Collaborative Resource Hub by going to our website, where you'll have access to helpful resources that can nudge you in the right direction. Let's inspire each other. If that guy did it, so can you. Find the Collaborative Resource Hub interviews on YouTube, all major podcast platforms, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay in the loop. Last but not least, my legal disclaimer: nothing in this interview or the Collaborative Resource Hub substitutes medical advice. Please connect with your GP if you need medical guidance. All right, Joanne, thank you so much for being here and chatting. I'm excited for this conversation.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're all about. It's just an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. So you are a wellness and diversity specialist within the live touring sect. What exactly do you do, and how does that relate to well-being?
So I am essentially, Amy, the person that people call when they want their tours to be healthier, or when they want specifically around mental health, or when they want to diversify their tours as well. So, they're seeing it's so great in this last year. A lot of people, especially like people within hiring positions, have come to a point on tours where they're looking around, they're saying, something's got to change because I have to be a part of the change that's happening in the world. And I think a lot of people have done a lot of self-reflection, and certainly within the groups that I've been helping to co-facilitate, which I'm sure we'll come on to later, a lot of people have realized that they need to commit to change. Otherwise, things cannot go back to how they were. Mm-hmm. So they come to me and say, how can we make this happen? So it's about finding people to help get them into positions so that crews are diversified, not for a box ticking exercise, but to actually educate the culture within that space so that it changes. And also kind of hand in hand with that, as I said, around mental welfare as well. So whether that is specifically around, how do I make sure that my crew gets an extra hour in bed? Because we know that sleep is good for their welfare, for instance. Or do you know someone who is a therapist that specializes in this? Or I've got someone on my crew who's in trouble with this. Can you recommend them someone to speak to? So that's kind of like that person in the middle who gets people, essentially like an ambassador in that role.
Yeah. So you're just, you connect people, you are a resource and connect people to more resources.
Exactly. And I think because I've been working in kind of the wellness and diversity space within live for so long, I've got a lot of people really trust my judgment, which is a huge honor and it's a pleasure. And it's people of all levels in the industry that turn to me and say, I need X, where do I go for that? And if I don't know the answer, I will certainly know someone and be able to reach out to someone in my network who does. So, it's kind of something that I've been building for a lot of years, and here it is, and I'm doing it, and it's a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah. So like what led you down like this path of this career and helping people in this way?
So it's really interesting. So I've worked in the music industry for a long time, like a long time. So I started working in a music management company when I was 21. And so it kind of weaves in really nicely with my own personal story. So I was working there and I was really young. I was young. I was like in an industry that I'd always wanted to be in. Like I know we've spoken before about like how music is like literally everything. And so I got this job working as a receptionist at a management company. And found myself in a position where all of a sudden I was picking up the phone to music publishers. I was picking up the phone to tour managers. I was picking up the phone to all these different people in the industry and just kind of getting an idea of what a manager does and what that looks like, and kind of looking at the back end of the industry as someone who had always been in the crowd, always wanting to be backstage.
Mm-hmm.
So that was amazing. And so I worked at that company for 6 years. And then I moved over to Berlin and worked at a label there for a little while and managed an artist there. And that was quite interesting because at that point, and I think if we could have some canned applause, this is like the time for applause. So yeah, so my addiction got really, really completely out of control and unmanageable in Berlin. And I actually tried to take my life when I lived there. Like things got really, 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 really unmanageable. And luckily enough for me, my old boss who used to work at the management company, I was still in close contact with him, and he'd been in 12-step recovery for something like 25 years at this point. And I flew home to come and see him, and he gave me some advice that changed my life. He said, you've always been welcome in the rooms of 12-step fellowship. And, and the most important thing that we do in that space is, we never force it down people's throats. We say attraction rather than promotion. And he said, you've always been welcome there. So that was a Friday. I went home and then on the Tuesday, I went to my first English speaking meeting of this particular 12-step fellowship. And since then, 11 years, 3 months and 3 days ago, I haven't touched a drink or a drug. So like, yes, cue the canned applause. Woo!
Yeah.
So I got sober in Berlin. So that was really interesting because, I came back to the UK and I worked in the NHS. So I worked in the National Health Service here. And I was really keen and committed to work specifically with women in recovery, and whatever that was, recovery from addiction or kind of mental health challenges. And I ended up landing this job at this mental health foundation, assisting a chief executive. I don't know, it's typical music industry. I just kind of like made it up and got there. Like I don't really know how it happened, and it was fantastic because I was on wards with people a lot of the time. For 4 years, I was on wards. I was, seeing how people, helping to design services around what people needed, and being the people that people turn to if they wanted to have, like a lived experience of someone in recovery. And that was just hugely powerful. And I managed to like set up some like women's only meetings in that particular space of something called the Women's Institute, which is really big in the UK. That was the first time they had met within a mental health kind of setting. And those women still all meet today, which is fantastic. Wow. Yeah, so there are women in recovery from different mental health challenges or addiction issues. But I'd always known that I wanted to come back to music. And so my old boss that I mentioned before, he actually died. So he got cancer and died. And I knew I wanted to come back, but that was my catalyst to come back. I was like, right, I need to be because he was always the person that people turned to when they had a mental health issue and I was like, I need to come back and do something, like, I need to do that. Okay. So I moved back to London with no plan and no job. And I just so happened at that time, thank my higher power and God and Mother Nature, that this charity started called Music Support, that were looking for volunteers, and they were started by music industry people for music industry people living with mental health or addiction issues. And I started volunteering there. And then on the helpline, I was the first volunteer to take a call on the helpline, which was amazing. I was so shit scared, but I did it and it was fantastic. It's awesome. Yeah, I helped someone to find a meeting near them, a recovery meeting. And then a year later, the charity got some funding and asked me if I wanted a full-time job. I was like, oh, obviously, amazing. So that was, I was at Music Support for 3 years, and I literally just recently left. And over that time, I was able to combine my lived experience of working in so many areas of the music industry and also working within mental health services and from my own, recovery. So it's like bringing that all together in a way that I don't know if I honestly didn't know what was going to happen when I moved back to London, and that's what happened. And here I am. That's the story.
Amazing. I feel like when things just sort of like, I don't know, you're carried down this stream. And I feel like that's that's the right direction, because I've talked with other people. They're like, I don't even know how like that happened or how I got here, but it's like they're in their passion and like serving others, and like it's just like, it's where you're supposed to be.
I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that my higher power put me in those positions, and everything I've done up until today has brought me to where I am today, so that
Hmm.
I can, exactly as you said, be of service to other people in a way that someone from outside of the industry wouldn't be able to understand. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing, that extra layer of empathy of being like, oh shit, I've been on the back of a tour bus and felt like that, or oh shit, I've been, on the side stage, or I've been, working at a label, or I've been working in a management company and felt that. And it's having that extra ability to empathize is like, that is immeasurably important.
Yeah. It's crucial.
It's crucial.
What
Absolutely.
what do you think of that like age old sentiment of you before you can take care of someone else, you have to take care of yourself first?
I am the biggest fan of that saying, because it's totally true. It's
Mhm.
totally true. And I need to be very, very clear about this, that I am a person that struggles to put myself first. It's always been an issue with me. It's something I've been really, really looking a lot at, especially since COVID started. How can I do that? Because I am the first person to always pass off the oxygen mask to other people. But through this time, through really fucking amazing therapy and working the 12 steps of the sponsor and doing the things that I need to do, I'm now able to show up for myself in a way that I wasn't before. So actually this like 12, 14 months have been a massive blessing for me, because now I'm actually able to help myself. And that's why I think, these new opportunities that I've got, and I'm now working in live touring, that only came about as a result of COVID. And I needed to look after myself first to be able to now stand into this role where I can effectively help other people.
Yeah, because you have to be at like a full capacity within yourself. Otherwise, I mean, like you literally have nothing to offer someone.
Absolutely. And that's what you see. Carers burnout is a thing. That is a
Mhm.
thing. It absolutely happens. And I
Yeah.
think, there is a sensation called the wounded healer, which is like people who are wounded who do exactly that as well, who try and heal other people, and to their detriment. And it never
Yeah.
works out well. Never
Well, and
works out
I think
well.
it's also, I mean, it's like a form of like denial, really, just so that you don't have to look at yourself.
That is it. You're completely, like, you're deflecting. You're helping other people rather than looking and saying, you know what? Maybe I need to keep my side of the street clean before I'm cleaning other people's like streets. So it's like, how do I do that? And I think we're also, so many people like that, in my experience, have, we've lived with a lot of trauma when we were kids. So I was a young carer for my mum when I was younger, and there's a few other things that happened in my childhood that almost pre-programmed me to have that predecision to essentially care for other people first.
Right.
So unless you actually understand that about yourself and are willing to reflect on that and
Uh-huh.
make change happen, you're not going to move anywhere.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So like now, as being healthier in that area, what are some things that you incorporate into your life to stay balanced or to balance your stress levels or just stay on the level?
I exercise a lot.
Okay.
I run 3 times a week. I swim 2 times a week. I eat really well. I'm vegan. I've been vegan for a long time. So, and that's like super important to me. So there's certain things like we were saying before, like sleep. I have to sleep. I have a sleep routine that I've gained during this time, and really looking at what helps me to sleep, and kind of catering it for me. And food is such a big thing for me. Like being vegan, and I try and eat really healthily as well. I don't just like eat. I'm not a junk food vegan at all.
Good.
Like there's certain times when I'll have like a vegan burger, but like I know some vegans that are junk food vegans,
Mhm.
and
A
they're
lot
like,
of them.
yeah, super unhealthy, high cholesterol. Like, just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're healthy, like at all, at all. So that's a really big thing that I try and watch. I take Udo's oils, I take spirulina, I take chlorella.
I
Yeah, I take,
remember, yeah, when we chatted the first time, I remember you mentioned the Udo's oils.
yeah,
Yeah.
every day in my smoothie I have that Udo's oils. It makes me feel great. As I said, spirulina, chlorella. I take multivits. I take magnesium as well. All these things to make sure that when I do go back out on the road, I'm going to be well. I've got all these like foundations
Yeah.
that are going to mean that I'm going to be well. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's how I do it. It's literally like, what does my body need and what does my mind need to keep me well? And I
Mhm.
do those things.
Mhm. Do you I guess once you go back out on the road, are you gonna have like your little arsenal of like, non-perishable, because the Udos is perishable. Well, you can get the soft gels, I guess. But like, will you have like your supplements with you?
Definitely, definitely. And a good friend of mine who's a tour manager, Susie Green, she also takes a NutriBullet on the road with her. And
Oh,
I am
does she?
yeah, I'm so doing that. She takes it in her carry-on. I'm going to do that. I'm doing that. I am not, I am happy to like sacrifice other things to have the space for that. Because
Yeah.
that is like, you can put some vegetables on your rider and you can just make a soup, or do you know what I mean? And that's, with like spirulina powders, like super green powder, super green food. And
Hmm.
Susie also mentioned to me liquid chlorella as well. I'm going to start buying that and putting it in my water.
Yeah.
I think that could be something that's just these little tiny things that I think could really enhance. And as I am today, I'll always have a standing desk. I'm a production coordinator, so we sit down a lot, but I'm going to refuse to do that. I like standing. Like
Yeah.
I know for me, my body is better when I'm standing. Otherwise, I just get that slump. I just get
Hmm.
slumped. And making sure that we're snacking on things like raw nuts, fruit. It's never going to. I don't really even like chocolate, so it's like it's not going to be like a sweets and crash. And post food show is going to be things like sushi. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's not going to be like pizza, and I mean beer. It would never
Heavy,
be anyway.
yeah, like heavy oily foods. Yeah.
No, no. And also like having I've gotten really into meditation this year as well. Like meditation cushion is coming out with me. Like, like my weighted blanket as well to like calm anxiety. Like my touring kit is gonna be sick. It's gonna be slick and sick.
Sounds awesome. That's so great. Do you do
Yeah.
electrolytes or anything like, after just to rehydrate and replenish all the lost minerals and stuff?
No, but Susie has recommended I do that. So that's something I need to start doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Electrolytes are huge because I mean, it's carrying all the trace minerals and the nutrients that you need, like to your brain so that it starts functioning better and like to your extremities. And yeah, they're huge.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. That's a tip for me. I'm going to do that because you're now the second person in like the space of a few weeks that said I need to do that.
Yeah. I'm talking to Susie tomorrow, by the way.
Fantastic. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. You too literally have got so much to talk about.
Um, so when you were in Berlin and things were really like getting bad, did you have any community there like supporting you and around you?
None.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting really as well, Amy, because I moved to Berlin thinking, oh, everyone speaks English. But like when I was there, like especially because I lived in the East, like you either spoke German or you spoke Russian, or I couldn't even go into a shop and buy bread. I didn't have the confidence I'd taken like 6 weeks of German classes, and I was just like, I'm English, like that colonialist mindset, like everyone's going to be speaking English. And boy, was I like rude awakenings when I got there. I had a few friends there, but they were like drug taking friends, and it wasn't like it was like fair with the friends. So I think that's like the most isolated I'd ever felt in my life because I couldn't speak the language, I couldn't integrate with other people, and I was just in a city that wasn't really. It was gentrified to an extent, but like the area that I was in was still quite like, yeah, well, it was East Berlin. So for me to naively go in there and think that I would just be able to call the shots, and it was really hard. And that's where I'm so glad that my old boss gave me the advice that he did, because going into a 12-step fellowship instantly gave me a community.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't have that before. I didn't have people that I could rely on if I really need, like if the shit really hit the fan and I needed help like right that minute. I didn't have anyone.
Mhm.
But then again, I walked into the doors of those meetings, and within a few weeks I had those numbers in my phone that I've never had before. They're like my lifelines. And now, those people that I'm still in contact with today, like we would take bullets for each other.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. That's solid. And yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, it's true. Just for whether someone has addiction that they're working on and working through, or just mental health imbalances, or just if you're human, like community is like the number one thing that like grounds you and nourishes you and is just there.
Yeah. And we don't even realize how much we need each other. And I think if anything, the last 14 months has shown, especially people in the music industry, that like, especially, like the touring community, everyone that's been at home, we've had some really, really, really horrible, stories of people like, hurting themselves or taking their lives, or because they're so used to being in the heart of a community with a family, like on the road or at a festival backstage or doing all these things. And all of a sudden they're not there anymore, and not being able to physically see each other. I think it's, I genuinely believe the ramifications of what we've been living through, that we are going to be feeling those for many, many years to come.
Mhm.
So it's important and so valuable that, things like Susie Green starting this community called the Back Lounge, which is like, she started that a year ago in a month, like, and it's essentially a whole bunch of people from live coming together on Zoom once a week and just talking about what's going on. And it's obviously, it's a well-being session, but she has different speakers come in, and it's just been amazing to connect with people all around the world and hear them sharing your story back to you about how much you miss your life. I miss my job. Like, I miss all of that so much. So the power of community is just immense.
Yeah. Um, if someone was feeling like anxious or overwhelmed and came to you, what would you say to them? How would you try and help them?
I think it's the biggest thing to do is just to listen to someone, because I think we're constantly, especially like I was talking to someone like recently about this, when we pick up calls like that, or when we're in the space with someone like that, our brain sometimes just goes straight into fixing mode.
Mhm.
And you're not present with that person when you're fixing, when you're thinking, oh, how am I going to finish that sentence? Oh, how am I going to, what do I know? How do I know? And I think that comes from a certain amount of uncomfortability within yourself to be able to just hold space.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that you can do is hold space for someone. And a lot of the time people just need to talk and maybe even tell you things that they've never dared say out loud before. And I think that's the biggest service you can be of someone, is like to give them your time and to be completely non-judgmental and treat the space hugely confidential, and just be fun, meet the person where they're at. I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. There is no right or wrong answer when you're doing that, when you've got the purest motivations at heart. And if someone's actually try and ascertain if they're asking for your help or whether they just want someone to listen to, like, because I think that's what people think.
Yeah. It's true.
you know
And I think too, like, just giving someone the space to talk, so often they end up walking into their own answers and solutions. They just need, you're mirroring for them or whatever. Like they just need that space to just, yeah.
That's right. That's right. And exactly that as well. I think I'd say 9 times out of 10, by the time I've kind of finished having one of those conversations with someone, they've found their own solution and they know what they need to do next. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And a lot of the time, it's just about keeping it really simple.
Uh-huh.
Keep it super simple, because I think we as humans are so good at overcomplicating things. And, I always kind of question people if it's appropriate on, like, the 4 pillars of health, right? So, like, how's your food? What's your nutritional intake at the moment? What's your exercise like? How are you moving yourself physically? What's your activity level like as far as like meeting with people and your community, and and your rest. And those are the 4 things. Like, how are you doing these things? And a lot of the time one of those things is out of kilter, and it's like, well,
Uh-huh.
those are like your anchors. You need those 4 like pillars in order to have all the other good stuff up here. So I think a lot of people forget that. A lot of people are
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I haven't actually eaten. Like, I always like was when I used to work on the helpline at music support, I used to have so many people call in and say, I don't remember the last time I didn't just eat carbs for a meal. And you're like, oh, that could be why you're having anxiety attacks. It could be really contributing to that. Like,
Mm-hmm. Blood sugar
but when you're,
levels.
yeah, when you're kind of like working in a space where you're just so busy all the time and you're not prioritizing yourself, it can happen really easily.
Yeah. And for me, like working in years and years working in the supplement aisles, I've helped so many people, just chatting. And I always give like, just ask fundamental questions. And like the biggest one is, hey, like, are you hydrating? Are you drinking water? Don't forget to drink. And it's just like, just that hydration.
That's a
um,
big one. I mean, I have colleagues that don't drink water all day and they're working like 18-hour days and they just don't drink water. And you're just like, whoa, that, like, you do realize that, like, without water, you basically can't breathe, you can't live. Like,
mhm.
it's a big thing. It's a small thing, but a big thing.
Yeah, it's huge. Even like your blood is 90% water, your muscles are 80% water, and I think like you're like what, like 70 or 80% water or something like that.
Wow. I mean, but that says it all. When you're not feeding that, what are you doing? You're turning into a California raisin, aren't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
Like
everything starts slowing down and like gets like sludgy.
that's and I know from myself. Yeah, exactly. Cheers. If I
Yeah.
don't drink water, like, I feel really rough. I
Hmm.
genuinely feel rough. I feel like someone's like packed my brain with loads of cotton, and I just feel really, like, headachy, and I get super shitty with people. Like, I
Yeah.
become a real asshole when I don't drink water.
Yeah. My headaches are like one of the biggest symptoms of, dehydration. And then also I've noticed for myself, like when my lips start getting chapped, then I'm like dehydrated. Cause like I I never use chapstick ever because I'm properly hydrated. My lips won't dry. I mean, unless it's like super windy and like freezing out, but like yeah, if you tune into your body, you can kind of see what's happening on the surface.
And this is the thing, I think we disconnect ourselves so much from our physical being and our mental being that we don't actually look for the signs that are already there. When your
Mhm.
body's saying or your mind's saying, hey, slow down, I need attention, like, hello, and then
Yeah.
if you don't pay attention to those signs because the show must go on, which is like the rock and roll saying, right? Then, it could lead to cancer. It could lead to so many other things that you could have easily, really. And I'm not saying that it's the cure for cancer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, it can negate those escalating to crisis, essentially.
Yeah, momentum is building. So if you can intercept that speed from that velocity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, exercise is a big one, a big thing. Like so many people that I know, like this year, especially because they've had this like 14 months, right? Like they've exercised probably for the first time in their lives. And they're just like different beings as a result. Like, I mean, for me, running has been like, and I was a person like, oh, I'll never run. I hate running. I was like a spinner or like yoga or like, and I still do love yoga, but like when the gyms closed, I had to do something. I was like, I can't just stay at home and just like, I was doing resistance band workouts, which were great,
Mhm.
but like I needed to be outside. So I was like, right.
Mhm.
I downloaded an app that's like the Couch to 5K app, and I just started running, and it's changed everything. It's like feeds into my meditation practice. It's like, and I can take my shoes on the road.
Yeah,
You can run anywhere, even if you run 5 minutes. It's better than not running for any minutes.
totally. Yeah. And I mean, the sunlight and fresh air is like, it's huge. It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah, especially when you work in like if you work in venues all the time where
Mhm.
you don't know what time of day it is because there's no windows.
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Yeah, and even if someone worked in an office and there is a window, but you're under fluorescent lights, like you need it. Do you intentionally make time to go out in nature and just be in nature?
Definitely, definitely. So my higher power manifests itself through trees. So I spend a lot of time like looking at trees and talking to trees. And when I'm running, I always thank trees as I'm running by them. I'm always thank you, because of their energy in the ground. They're providing an ability for me to move. The air in our lungs is because of them. Like,
Mhm.
so I'm always thanking them.
Here's an advert in less than 20 seconds. Did you know that Wellness Provisions offers one-on-one wellness sessions? Yep. So if you're seeking to get healthy and ahead in life, but feeling a little stuck, then book a session and let's get you unstuck. Now, back to the interview. How important is being in gratitude and having, a positive mindset? Like, how valuable do you feel that is?
More valuable than probably on par with eating, sleeping, and resting. Research suggests that if we are in a space of positivity and if we live in a positive like within a positive mindset, everything is completely different. And your immune system is boosted. You naturally feel better, and that's very much like the work that you do in the 12 steps of recovery is like based around rewiring your brain and the way you consider things and you think about things. And I've done a lot of work on myself over the years to realize that I do have like, my first thought, it can be really negative, like framing things in a really negative light that's really unhelpful and unhealthy. But when you're able to change that and turn it into, turn problems or challenges into a learning opportunity, you will grow exponentially. You'll become a totally different person. And I honestly think that the fear that's behind like negativity, it limits our growth. Like
Mhm.
it totally limits us. It limits us as humans. So
Mhm.
if you're able to understand and move into a place of faith rather than fear, and
Mhm.
just and I love there's a saying, and I don't know who it's from, but feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge fan of that because I have never ever changed by being comfortable ever.
Right. Yeah.
So
There's
I love
actually
that.
Yeah, I have on my door, a few, like, pieces of paper, with, like, things on them, and one is, "Successful people embrace fear and discomfort."
There you go.
So
That's it. Whoever said that, hallelujah. That's exactly
yeah,
right.
one of the books I read, I don't remember which one.
A great book, but it's totally true as well.
So with your job, why is it so meaningful to you? What do you want to kind of share about the changes that you love seeing happen with what you do?
I think the biggest thing is, Amy, is I have been othered a lot of my life, whether it be because the music I listen to, the way I look, who I choose to love in my life. And I know what that feels like to be marginalized. And that is, it's such a place of isolation. Even as someone in a sober individual, who navigates a space that isn't necessarily always sober, I know what it's like to be seen as like the odd one out, or to not be included, or to not be invited to things because, oh, you don't drink, so you obviously don't want to come and have fun.
Right.
Exactly. So, but when you have fundamental characteristics about yourself that people shame you for, and then they ostracize you, I think you find a certain empathy that other people just don't understand, and because they haven't experienced it themselves.
Hmm.
And I think with all the work that I'm doing as a part of the tour production group with an amazing production manager who I'm co-facilitating a space on around diversity, equity and inclusion is, finding ways that we can actually really invite people to really sit back and really question why their spaces are so one particular way. So, why the touring community is so white cis men centric. Why is that? There's got to be a reason. And many people, realize that it's for nepotism. People have kept themselves comfortable. They're hiring their friends. They're not even giving other people a look in. So, what's happening on stage isn't reflected backstage. You've got all these like beautiful, multi-ethnicity kind of performers or performances or audience members, and then it's not reflected backstage. And that's actually just not a healthy ecosystem. So the work that we've been doing is to try and invite people to understand, how we can have, gender diversity in the space, how we can have, ethnic diversity in the space, and to educate people so that when, new people come into that workspace, they're welcomed rather than being shunned or bullied, because that is a big part of inclusion. I heard a fantastic quote that I thought was amazing that said, diversity is what variety looks like from the outside, looks shiny for people to do to tick boxes, but inclusion is what happens on the inside, like actually when you're in your workplace. So, and that's something I feel super passionate about, as I said, as someone who's been marginalized for a lot of my life. From my very earliest memories, I've been marginalized, and I just don't want that to happen anymore for people. And I have the greatest empathy for people. And when we are able to integrate and celebrate everyone for what they bring, it's so much more interesting. That's it. It's like we learn so much. We are starving ourselves of learning opportunities by keeping people that are like us around us. So why wouldn't you? I love learning, and that's the biggest thing for me. It's like I want to be told how certain food from a different part of the world tastes, or what religious beliefs someone has from another place, or what gender identity someone other than myself has. I think that's fantastic. We learn so much from each other. And and I think socially, by bringing people into our space that aren't like us, we are literally like enriching our lives. And that's what I want for people. I just want people's lives to be enriched. That's all I want.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What are ways, I guess, that you, I don't know if teach is the right word, but facilitate inclusion?
Sure. So I think a prime example of that. So if we look specifically at the groups that Keely and I have been co-facilitating together. So, when we very first came together, it was this time last year, actually. So when the tour production group came together, it was a collective of production managers and tour managers who essentially got together to write like what post-COVID touring guidelines, like for when, because people still thought a year ago they were going to be touring. So they were like, right, how can we get COVID guidelines and bring them backstage and create a set of guidelines that's created by the people for the people, rather than being told what to do. So they wrote this fantastic document, released it, and then they said, well, whilst we've got each other's attention, there's a few other areas we want to look at. So environmental sustainability is one, mental well-being is another, and the other is diversity. And I was originally brought in to help to inform the mental health kind of tributary, but then very quickly moved over to the diversity space because of all the work that I do volunteering for a charity called Girls Rock London. And Girls Rock London is a part of an international Girls Rock Camp Alliance, which is like essentially like an international umbrella of all these amazing organizations who are committed to culturally diversifying people's lives. That is essentially what they do. And Girls Rock London specifically holds camps for people 18 and over, and those 11 to 17 who are women, trans, or non-gender conforming individuals. And we essentially empower people through like helping them to learn instruments. But there's so much more than that, because at our camps, you don't just come and, you know, you pick up an instrument you may have never touched before. You write a song, form a band, and perform all in the like within a week or within 3 days if you're at the 17. And it's amazing because you see the confidence of these people just grow. And you know, we work specifically with people who, so we work in an area of East London called Hackney, which is quite, you know, it's not very socioeconomically diverse, in that there's extreme poverty and there's extreme wealth. You know, there's a lot of gentrification that's happened in that space. But you know, we have a lot of people that are brought to us through mental health services, through local children's mental health services, or we work with foundations locally that would they help identify young people who may be groomed to go into gangs. So it's like, or like refugee children, or like people who you know, who we want to bring into a space that's completely safe. We make sure that our spaces are filled with women, trans, and non-binary volunteers. We've got 2 volunteers to 1 person, so it's like, it's a great ratio. And you know, not only do you get instrument tuition, you also have sit down workshops about gender identity, or about racism, or, you know, anti-racism. And you know, it's been my language for so long, because you know, I'm part of the Riot Girl movement from like since I was like a kid. So it's like, it's something that's been in my language for a long time. So yeah, kind of going back to the TPG, one of the people who started that knew that about me, and he was like, well, you're the perfect person to, you know, to run this space. And I said, well, I think, you know, Keely would be fantastic. She elected herself, and I'm glad she did, because she came forward to give her time. And we've just been taking people on this journey. So in our very first meeting, we sat together and created a safe space agreement that is thereby says things like, we all come together under the banner of change, recognizing that we might use outdated language, and we give each other permission to correct each other, but not in a way that's angry or aggressive. You know, so we're inviting people to come in and try and give it a go, and really try and understand and change their thoughts. And you know, we had some really fantastic gender diversity, LGBT inclusion training at the very beginning. About, I think it was July last year, one of my colleagues from Girls Rock London came and shared their experience. And it's almost like you could see people's like light bulbs going off in people's heads. Like on Zoom, you're all sitting there and like we're having these conversations, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, there's one, yeah, that light's gone off. And I was getting messages from some of the tour managers who, you know, they work at a very high level, these people, and they don't normally have the opportunity to sit and really think about things, because they're just like, they just do, yeah. They're effective, they don't have the time to really be cerebral on subjects. And I was getting messages like, the training and the space that you and Keely have provided here has like changed my life, and it's changed it for the better. And now what I'm going to do is, when I'm advancing a tour, I'm not just going to ask for male and female toilets. I'm going to ask for male, female, and gender neutral toilets. And to hear that is like, you know, so that means all of our trans and non-gender conforming siblings will feel comfortable when they go into their workspace. So because they've got a toilet that they feel more comfortable using. Like, sure. It's literally that easy. But I think for them, it was pretty hard because they didn't understand why. And they did also, you know, have a lot of people in that space say, I want to help, but I don't want to say the wrong thing, you know. So we'd get guests to come in and share their lived experience and say, just ask me, you know. And we had, you know, members of the trans community come in and talk to us, or, you know, members from all over the different parts of the industry that are doing cool stuff, that are mainly from grassroots organizations, coming and talking to like these kind of high level touring professionals and like meeting together in the middle. And I think that was it, is them meeting people and being like, you're non-binary. What does that mean? How can I help? You know, what can I do to make your life easier if you come on one of my tours? Yeah. So it's like, and that's it, is like, you know, when you can like personalize things for people, you know, and the big work that we're doing around anti-racism in that space as well, is like, when you can bring people of color into that space and they share their lived experience of what it's like to be on a tour, and tour managers' faces will drop and they're like, fuck, that's so embarrassing. Like, I can't believe that happens, you know, in this day and age. So, you know, it's about, and I think that's something that Keely and I have really succeeded in, is we've brought those two areas together who would normally never talk to each other, and they've engaged in these conversations in a space that's completely like non-judgmental,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah, and each person you're giving them the benefit of the doubt that like they're coming from a place of compassion, and like you said, I might use the wrong word or something, but like no harm is intended, and you're just learning and growing.
And that's it, I think. And it goes back to very much about like when someone comes and asks for help, it's like meeting them where they're at and helping them to see that there's no wrong answer and there's no shame in asking and there's no fear here. It's just about us, coming together. That's why the safe space agreement, it spells it all out very clearly to us. But it's really important that we say that at the beginning of meetings, because we come in and we think, I can be myself, and if I make a mistake, no one's going to be there like, oh my god, you made a mistake, how dare you. It's not going to happen like that. And that's, I mean, who learns like that? Nobody learns like that. So I think that's how we've made tangible change kind of possible. And again, around inclusion is, those people have said to us and demonstrated that when they are hiring on tours, they're going to hire in a different way, and they're going to make sure that on their tours people have got things like a safe space agreement in place, or they get like a welcome letter when they're brought into the tour that explains what is and isn't acceptable. And that's amazing. I had a production manager share with me recently a welcome letter that said, this is a space free of bullying. If you see anything at all, my office is a confidential space, come and talk to me. Like, I've never ever seen that before in the touring world.
And they're standing behind it. It's not just, here, look, we look good. They're backing it up.
It's not lip service. And I think this is probably the first time I've ever seen that in that space, and I just think it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
More applause.
Yes. Woo.
Is there anything else, words of wisdom or tips, advice, anything that you would like to share with other rock and rollers or anybody?
I think the biggest thing is like, it is so punk rock to look after yourself. It is like the biggest like political fuck you to love yourself. It totally is. It's like, that's way more punk rock than like wearing a fucking million safety pins in your face. You know what I mean? Because, the capitalist society that we live in wants us to consume, wants us to hate ourselves, wants us to, compete against each other. But if you don't do that, that is totally punk rock.
Yeah, it's true. A huge fuck you to consumerism, and whether it's consuming media or, shit food or whatever, like 100%.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest thing. That's my biggest thing. There's my takeaway.
I love it. I love it. Do you have a favorite quote?
I do. So my quote comes from a fantastic Black queer trans woman who people may know, called Marsha P. Johnson, who effectively helped to start the Stonewall riot, which we now know as Pride. And she said something once that just really, really resonates with me. And she said, pay it no mind. When people are questioning your gender identity, pay it no mind. When people are questioning you and your very fundamentals of who you are, pay it no mind. Don't give them the satisfaction of having to prove yourself. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone, and that's why, the self-love and it is the most punk rock thing you can do, like loving yourself, relentlessly loving yourself. Yeah, it's amazing. So Marsha P. Johnson, legend.
Awesome. Thank you so much for oh my gosh, I feel like how long we've been talking for 43 minutes, and wow. I feel like so much has been covered and shared, and your experiences, I mean, in your life are just what they've done to form you and shape you, and what you're doing now, and what everyone you're affecting, and then everyone they're affecting, that I mean, it's phenomenal. You're doing such awesome work, and your presence is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. But you know what it is, Amy? It keeps me humble as well. I'm so humble, and the humility that it brings as a result to know that because of my existence, one person has had an easier time. That is the most beautiful, beautiful gift I could ever hope for back. But thank you for saying those kind words.
Yeah, of course. Have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy the sunshine in London. I'm so tired.